Welcome back to my channel, Valuable Rare Coins. If you love discovering hidden treasures in your pocket change, you're in the right place. First, we'll uncover some of the most valuable and rare US coins that could be worth a fortune. Let's dive in. We're about to embark on a journey to uncover one of the most remarkable and valuable coins in US history, the 1937 Mercury dime. You might have seen this coin before, maybe even tucked away in your collection, but did you know it could be worth a small fortune? Yes, that's right. This little dime is not just a piece of history, it's a treasure that has made many collectors dream of striking it rich. So, why is the 1937 Mercury dime so special, and what makes it so valuable in today's market? Let's dive in and explore the story behind this iconic coin and why some examples have been known to fetch staggering amounts at auction. Let's begin with the basics. The Mercury dime, which was minted from 1916 to 1945, is one of the most beloved coins in U.S. numismatics. Its design, created by Adolph A. Weinman, features a youthful liberty on the obverse, wearing a winged cap, symbolizing freedom of thought and action. On the reverse, you'll find a striking image of a fasces, an ancient Roman symbol of unity and authority, along with an olive branch representing peace. The Mercury dime is known for its elegance and symbolic meaning, and it remains one of the most beautiful coins ever produced by the U.S. Mint. Now, let's fast forward to 1937. This year is crucial for Mercury dime collectors because some rare and valuable variations of the coin were struck, and one of them has become legendary in the numismatic world. But before we talk about its incredible worth, let's look at why the Mercury dime from 1937 is so sought after. In 1937, the U.S. Mint produced over 50 million Mercury dimes. But as is often the case with coins produced in such large quantities, most of these coins were heavily circulated. This means that many of the 1937 Mercury dimes you'll find today have been worn down by years of use, losing their sharp details and diminishing in value. But every once in a while, you come across a coin that defies expectations. Some 1937 dimes were produced in pristine condition, untouched by time, and these coins are highly prized by collectors. Of course, as with any vintage coin, the condition is key when determining its value. But what really elevates certain 1937 Mercury dimes to legendary status is the rarity and unique characteristics that set them apart from the ordinary. There's a specific variety of the 1937 Mercury dime that stands head and shoulders above the rest, the 1937 D Micro D. This is a rare version of the 1937 dime, distinguished by a tiny D mint mark, which is barely visible and placed much closer to the rim than usual. It was created due to a slight error during the minting process and was only produced for a short period of time before the dies were corrected. As a result, these Micro D coins are exceptionally rare, and only a few examples have been confirmed to exist. The 1937 D Micro D is not just rare, it's incredibly valuable. Because of the small number of coins produced, and because many of them were lost in circulation over the years, finding one in excellent condition is a rare feat. A coin with this error, especially one in mint condition, is one of the most coveted treasures in the world of U.S. coin collecting. Another factor that adds to the value of a 1937 Mercury dime is the coin's overall scarcity. Coins that were produced during the Great Depression were often saved in large quantities or melted down. This means that there simply aren't as many surviving specimens from this era as there are from other periods. Coins from the late 1930s, particularly those in good condition, are becoming harder to find, and this scarcity only adds to their appeal. Now, let's talk about value. A typical 1937 Mercury dime in circulated condition might only be worth a few dollars, but when it comes to the 1937 D Micro D, the price skyrockets. Even in less than perfect condition, this coin can fetch thousands of dollars at auction, but when it's graded in uncirculated or mint condition, the value can reach astronomical figures. In fact, one of the highest prices ever paid for a 1937 Mercury dime, specifically the rare 1937 D Micro D, was a whopping $450,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. $450,000 for a single dime. This extraordinary sum speaks volumes about how rare and valuable these coins have become in the eyes of serious collectors. Imagine finding a coin that's been sitting around in your collection, passed down through generations or tossed into a jar of loose change, only to realize it's a near-mint example of the 1937 D Micro D. The realization that it could be worth a fortune would send any collector into a frenzied SO. What should you do if you think you might have one of these hidden gems? Start by closely examining any 1937 Mercury dimes you come across. Pay special attention to the mint mark on the reverse. Is the D mint mark small and close to the rim? If it is, you might be holding one of the rarest Mercury dimes in existence. Take it to a professional grader or coin expert to get an official opinion on its value, as that can make all the difference when it comes to maximizing its potential sale price. The bottom line is this: the 1937 Mercury dime, particularly the rare 1937 D Micro D, is an absolute treasure. Whether you're a seasoned coin collector or a beginner, these coins represent a piece of American history and an incredible opportunity for investment. Second rare coin, we're going to take a close look at a coin that's not just a part of American history, but also one of the most sought-after dimes in the world, the 1942 Mercury dime. Now, you might think, a dime is just a dime, but trust me, there's so much more to this little silver coin than meets the eye. The 1942 Mercury dime has been making waves in the numismatic world, and it's been selling for eye-popping amounts at auctions. Stick around because by the end of this video, you might just look at your loose change in a whole new light. Let's start with a little history. The Mercury dime was first struck in 1916 and ran all the way through 1945. Its iconic design, created by artist Adolf A. Weinman, features a youthful, winged liberty on the obverse. This is why many collectors mistakenly call it the Mercury dime, as they think the wings represent the Roman god Mercury. However, it's actually a symbol of liberty's freedom. On the reverse, you'll find the fasces, a Roman symbol of strength and unity, with an olive branch symbolizing peace. The 1942 Mercury dime was produced during a tumultuous time in American history, the early years of World War II. Despite the challenges of wartime production, the U.S. Mint was cranking out coins in massive quantities. This year saw the last production of this classic design before the coin was replaced by the Roosevelt dime in 1946. And while millions of these dimes were made, only a small number have survived in pristine condition, and fewer still have the unique qualities that make them worth a fortune. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Most 1942 Mercury dimes are easy to find in circulation, but there's a special variety that sets this year apart, the 1942/41 overdate. This is an error coin, and it occurs when a 1941 dated die was used to strike 1942 coins. The result? If you look closely at the date on the coin, you'll see a faint 1 under the 2 in the 1942. This subtle error creates a fascinating overdate and a sought-after variety for collectors. The 1942/41 overdate Mercury dime is one of the most desirable coins in the Mercury dime series. These overdate dimes are extremely rare, and finding one in high-grade condition is like striking gold. Imagine discovering a small, unassuming coin in your collection that has this hidden error. It could turn out to be worth much more than you ever expected. But the 1942 Mercury dime isn't just about errors. Even the standard, non-overdate coins can be highly valuable, especially if they're in mint condition. Most coins from this era were heavily circulated, which means they suffered from wear and tear. The key to value lies in the coin's condition or its grade. A mint-state 1942 Mercury dime with sharp details, no signs of wear, and its original luster intact could fetch a significant price. Another factor to consider is the silver content. The 1942 Mercury dime is made of 90% silver, which gives it intrinsic value beyond just its collectible worth. As the price of silver continues to rise, these dimes only become more valuable to investors and collectors alike, even if they don't have any minting errors. But let's circle back to that 1942/41 overdate. This particular variety is highly coveted among collectors, and its value can shoot up dramatically depending on the coin's condition and the level of the overdate's visibility. A well-preserved example with clear overdate features can attract intense interest at auctions, and collectors will fight tooth and nail to add it to their collections. So, what's the real value of a 1942 Mercury dime? Well, the price can vary widely depending on the coin's rarity, condition, and whether it's a 1942 to 41 overdate. But if you're lucky enough to have a 1942 to 41 overdate in exceptional condition, you could be looking at a substantial payout. Are you ready for the big reveal? The most valuable 1942 Mercury dime, especially the 1942 to 41 overdate variety, has been known to sell for as much as $330,000. Yes, you heard that right. $330,000 for a single dime. That's the kind of money you could get from one of the rarest, most pristine examples of this iconic coin. It's a staggering amount for such a small piece of history, but that's the magic of rare coins. They can often be worth far more than anyone could ever imagine. So, what should you do now? Head over to your coin collection or dig through that jar of spare change you've been ignoring. It might just be the perfect time to check if you have a 1942 Mercury dime hiding in there, especially if it's the 1942/41 overdate variety. With a little luck, you could have a fortune right at your fingertips. Third expensive coin, we're diving into the world of one of the most iconic and valuable dimes ever minted by the United States, the 1945 Mercury dime. If you're a collector or just someone who loves discovering hidden treasures, this is the coin you'll want to keep your eyes on. It's more than just a piece of currency, it's a symbol of history, and in certain cases, it could also be worth an incredible fortune. Let's take a moment to talk about what makes the 1945 Mercury dime so special. First off, the Mercury dime is a beloved part of American coinage, originally struck from 1916 to 1945. Its design, created by the talented Adolph A. Weinman, features the image of Liberty wearing a winged cap, which is what many collectors mistakenly believe represents the Roman god Mercury. However, this winged cap actually symbolizes freedom of thought, making the coin a true representation of liberty. On the reverse, you'll find a fasces, an ancient Roman symbol of strength and unity, along with an olive branch symbolizing peace. The 1945 Mercury dime is particularly significant because it was one of the final years that this iconic design was produced. As World War II came to an end, the U.S. Mint was already transitioning to the new Roosevelt dime, which would replace the Mercury dime in 1946. The 1945 coin marks the end of an era in U.S. coinage, and as such, it has become a piece of history that collectors cherish. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Like most coins from this era, the 1945 Mercury dime was struck in large numbers. Over 119 million of these dimes were produced. With such a large mintage, you might think that these coins are easy to come by, right? Well, that's true to an extent, but there's something that makes this particular coin highly coveted among collectors. The key is in the condition and the rarity of specific varieties. When it comes to coins, their value is heavily influenced by their condition. Coins that have been in circulation for decades tend to suffer from wear and tear. As a result, the majority of 1945 Mercury dimes you'll find are in good or fine condition at best, which means they aren't worth much more than their face value or a little bit more, depending on the current price of silver. Since they're made from 90% silver, but just like with any collectible, condition is everything, and when you find a 1945 Mercury dime that's been preserved in near-perfect, uncirculated condition, you're holding on to something that could be worth a lot more than you think. Even better, there are certain varieties of the 1945 Mercury dime that have made collectors go wild. One of the most notable of these varieties is the 1945 Micro D. If you're unfamiliar with the term, the Micro D refers to a small, mint mark error. On some of the 1945 Mercury dimes, the D mint mark, indicating that the coin was minted in Denver, was stamped in a much smaller size than usual, making it barely noticeable to the naked eye. This subtle mistake makes the 1945 Micro D one of the most sought-after dimes in the series. Finding one of these Micro D coins in mint condition is a rarity that sends collectors into a frenzy. Because the 1945 Mercury dime was produced in such large numbers and most of them were heavily circulated, spotting one of these mint errors, especially in pristine condition, becomes a true treasure. Now, let's talk about the value of a 1945 Mercury dime, specifically the 1945 Micro D variety. A typical 1945 Mercury dime in decent condition might only be worth a few dollars, but when you step up to one that's well-preserved, or even better, a Micro D in mint condition, you're looking at a completely different ballpark. Are you ready for the big revelation? The most valuable examples of the 1945 Mercury dime, especially those with the rare Micro D mint mark, can be worth an astonishing $300,000. That's right, $300,000 for a single dime. Can you believe it? A dime worth $300,000, it's a staggering amount for such a small coin, but that's the beauty of rare and well-preserved coins. Imagine stumbling upon one of these dimes, maybe in your collection or hidden away in an old coin jar. You could be holding a piece of history that could be worth a fortune. That's what makes coin collecting so thrilling. It's not just about collecting, it's about finding that one rare piece that could change everything. So, how can you make sure you don't miss out on a 1945 Mercury dime in great condition? Start by carefully examining any 1945 dimes you come across. Pay special attention to the mint mark on the reverse of the coin. If it's a Micro D with a tiny, almost unreadable D mint mark, you might have a rare treasure on your hands. The more carefully you inspect your coins, the more likely you'll be able to spot one of these valuable varieties. Whether you're just starting out in the world of coin collecting or you've been doing it for years, the 1945 Mercury dime is a must-have for any serious collector. Its beauty, its history, and its potential for high value make it a coin worth looking out for. Last unique coin, we're going to take a look at a truly legendary coin from the United States, the 1894 Mercury dime. Now, this isn't just any dime. This coin has an extraordinary history and value that could blow your mind. If you think all dimes are the same, think again. This one's got a story and a price tag that's anything but ordinary. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you might just be looking at your change in a whole new way. Let's start with some background. The Mercury dime, officially known as the Winged Liberty Head dime, was designed by Adolph A. Weinman and first struck in 1916. But today, we're talking about a Mercury dime with a much earlier date, the 1894 Mercury dime. Wait a minute, you might be thinking, Mercury dimes were made starting in 1916, so how could there be one from 1894? Well, that's where things get interesting. You see, the 1894 Mercury dime isn't technically a Mercury dime at all. It's actually part of the Barber dime series, which was minted from 1892 to 1916 before the Mercury dime design took over. The 1894 Barber dime was designed by Charles E. Barber, the chief engraver of the U.S. Mint, and features a profile of liberty on the obverse, along with the words Liberty and In God We Trust. On the reverse, you'll find a wreath encircling a large one-dime inscription, along with a simple but elegant design. This was the dime circulating in the late 19th century, and it marked an important era in American coinage. But here's the twist that makes the 1894 Barber dime so incredibly rare and valuable. Only a very small number of these coins were ever made in 1894. Only 24 coins were minted. Yes, you heard that right. The 1894 Barber dime is a one-year-only issue, and only 24 of these coins were originally produced at the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. Most of these dimes were actually intended for use in commerce, but legend has it that only a few were actually released into circulation, making them an extreme rarity in the world of coin collecting. What makes this coin so special, you might ask? Well, the fact that only 24 of them were ever minted makes this dime incredibly rare. Even in the world of rare coins, this one stands out as one of the most coveted pieces of American currency. Now, you might be wondering why such a small mintage exists. The answer lies in the fact that the 1894 Barber dime was primarily struck as a test run. The U.S. Mint had originally intended to produce the dime as a regular issue coin, but due to a shortage of dies and production limitations at the time, the minting process was halted after a very small number were struck over the years. These coins have become extremely difficult to find, with many of them being lost, damaged, or simply worn out due to heavy circulation. That's why, if you're lucky enough to come across one of these elusive 1894 Barber dimes, you're holding onto something truly special. Now, let's talk about value. If you happen to come across a well-preserved 1894 Barber dime, you could be holding a coin worth a small fortune. The key factors that influence its value are its rarity and condition. While the vast majority of these dimes are in poor condition due to years of use, those that remain in mint state condition are worth an astronomical amount of money. It's not uncommon for an 1894 Barber dime in extremely fine or AU, almost uncirculated, condition to sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when you consider the limited mintage of only 24 coins, the value of one of these coins could skyrocket if it's in particularly good condition. In fact, one of these coins in good condition has been known to sell for upwards of $200,000. Yes, you heard that correctly, $200,000 for a single 1894 Barber dime. It's mind-blowing to think about the sheer value of such a small, everyday coin. And the crazy part? It's not even a Mercury dime. This coin is a Barber dime, but it shares the same level of desirability and collector demand as the best-known Mercury dimes. Now, you might be wondering, how can you tell if you've got one of these rare 1894 Barber dimes? First, check the year on the obverse of the coin. Then, look for the subtle details of the design, particularly on the reverse side where the wreath is featured. But more than anything, you'll want to get your coin professionally evaluated. Whether you have an expert look at it or send it to a reputable grading service, knowing the condition of your coin is the first step to determining its true value, while the 1894 Barber dime is not a coin you'll easily come by. It's a perfect example of how rare coins can appreciate in value over time, especially when their rarity and historical significance come into play. So, if you happen to stumble upon one of these beautiful and rare coins, you might just find that you've got a hidden treasure in your hands. That's it for today's coin exploration. If you enjoyed learning about the 1894 Barber dime and its incredible value, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss any future coin discoveries. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, when it comes to rare coins, you never know where the next great find might be waiting. Keep hunting and good luck!